Donald Trump. Donald Trump was indicted for keeping sensitive documents in his personal property, which may lead him to prison. Donald Trump called the indictment charges in Donald Trump manner ridiculous and baseless and said it's biased against him. What do you think? In this case, is Donald Trump being persecuted for doing nothing wrong, or should he be indicted and potentially go to jail?
Well, it's speculation, isn't it, to say anything, and for me to comment on it would be pure speculation.
Why?
Because we don't know the facts at the moment. I know there's charges gone. Just because there's a charge out doesn't mean to say that he's guilty. We've just said that about Nicholas Sturgeon.
Do you think those charges are against him personally?
I've no idea. I'm sorry, you're not going to get me on
it. No, it's okay.
I really don't know. There is a lot of political shenanigans in the USA.
Yeah.
You don't know really. Yeah. It's a very different animal to the UK when it comes to politics over there.
UK is slightly calmer.
Well, politics is very different. Yeah. Journalism's very different in the UK to America. So, in my life and my experience of things like this is, I just don't like comparing the UK and the USA.
Sure. What do you think, Alan?
Well, we said, as Stephen said, innocent till proven guilty. That must apply to our political opponents as well as to our friends. I would say this, though, that the independence of the process, which has led to this stage of indictment, seems to me to be reasonable. In other words, what Trump supporters, indeed Boris supporters, want you to believe is the process is corrupt, right? It's run by people who are biased, who want to destroy them. It's not objective and independent. I see absolutely no evidence for that whatsoever. There is an interesting point about whether people like Boris and Trump are being singled out. You hear this all the time. So the question is not are they innocent or guilty, it's whether they're being singled out. And I think there is an element now of leaders being singled out. And that's the consequence you pay for being a leader. And I think that's something we need to start getting our head round. If you are a leader, you're entitled to be held to the highest standards, left or right.
I think the point
left or right.
Donald Trump is making is being singled out in comparison to other leaders.
Well, there's no evidence of that. Joe Biden is under investigation. There seems to the material difference that appears to be the case, although Joe Biden might find himself being indicted. Yeah. Okay, but the material difference appears to be that when challenged, Trump, first of all, didn't cooperate and withheld significant numbers of documents, whilst claiming he'd handed everything over. Whereas the minute it became clear Biden had documents, he basically handed absolutely everything over that he conceivably could. That appears to be the difference. But until we see those respective situations, we don't know. The right in America are obsessed with Biden's son. I was thinking about this the other day. Yeah, they are obsessed with his son. Now, let's be honest about this. Those of us who are involved in politics, including me and Stephen and others, we wouldn't want our children dragged into this in the way that Joe Biden's son is being dragged. By all means, hold Joe Biden to account for misdemeanors. And by the way, if Biden's son has done things that are illegal, he has to be held to account for them. But the merciless way that his son is being used as a political pawn...
Do you think this is a media issue in America?
No, I don't. I think it's a right-left issue as well.
They love to drag up dirt on anything they can find out.
Well, but I'll be honest, Stephen. I think it's everywhere. I think we're in a very worrying, concerning era in terms of the scale of the challenges that we face as a world. We've got a war in Europe. We've got a cost of living crisis. We've been through COVID. We've got Iran threatening Israel and the stability of the Middle East as we speak. Okay, don't underestimate that. That's coming next. Unfortunately. Okay, and yet we've got the Syria issue. We've got, in my view, on the whole, pretty shockingly poor leaders. The only leader I can name who I have respect for, who's actually running a country at the moment. I'll be careful just in case somebody says you don't mean Keir Starmer. The only person who's leading a country I respect is Zelensky at the moment. I think he's showing tremendous courage and strength. Other than that, I can't name one leader of a country that I currently have a great deal of respect for. So we have massive challenges which outside of major wartime we've perhaps not seen in our generation anyway. We have pretty awful leaders, and we have mud being slung in a way that we haven't seen before, and we have the most horrendous polarization between right and left, between secular and religious, as we see in Israel right now, which is a slightly different dynamic, but that's also has a right-left dynamic. There's a phrase: can you to disagree, one doesn't have to be disagreeable. I hope we've shown that on the programme here today. Okay, that has gone completely out of the window now. Completely out of the window.
On this programme.
Except on this programme.
Yes,
anything, exactly. Thanks to your wonderful chairmanship, of course. Anything goes. Okay, anything goes. And this whole business about saying, if you are found out, if you are held to account, if you are held responsible, you immediately say that the whole system is biased against me, there's an ideological agenda, it's the liberal left or it's the far right. It's never about that. It's a fair, objective process. So, yeah, these are very, very bad times for democracy. And we are not choosing leaders who unite and heal and bring people together. We're choosing leaders who fan the flames of division in every society. And this is where I hope that maybe the left and right could find some common cause. Maybe we can have massive ideological and philosophical differences, but we want leaders who want to unite and bring people together and not to divide people. So I think it's something that we cannot underestimate the scale of the problem. The difficulties that we face, and I don't see those coming to an end anytime soon, by the way. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
But you bring up the point about choosing the right leaders, and unfortunately it's down to, I don't think it's unfortunate, but it's down to the people that choose the leaders and things like that. At the moment,
except from the case of Rishi Sunak.
Well, you just stole me thunder there.
Yeah, well, sorry.
Well, it's not true, is it? Because the parties choose leaders before the public gets.
Before
MP's but it's true. The parties choose leaders before the public gets to choose leaders.
Say the same thing as what you're saying here is about they should be choosing.
Didn't say they should. No, hold on. No. I'm saying the public get to vote for leaders that the respective parties have chosen as their candidate.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, that's.
So the situation is we've got the country vote in the last general election. The country voted for a party headed by Boris Johnson.
Yeah. And
then the party sort of fell apart and said, right, Boris is out the window. Let's get a new leader in. And then they had this this circus that went on for months and months to choose a new leader, and all it did was embarrass the party and caused more damage, I think. But then we had a situation where it was engineered that you had a candidate that wasn't up to the job, I think, against Rishi Sunak. And they thought, the powers that be, thought that Rishi would walk it. And the members were so incensed with the choices that were there, they ended up voting for Liz Truss. And whatever you think about Liz Truss, they did not vote for Rishi Sunak when it comes to the membership. And a lot of MPs were saying, we really think that the parliamentarians should be choosing the leader, not the members. I mean, the members go out and post the leaflets for the parliament, for the MPs, and do all the donkey work and stuff like that. They wouldn't be in their positions without the members. So to turn around and say, well, they should be making the decision, not the members, I just think that's really, really wrong. And at the end of the day, the parliamentarians, or the element that wanted Rishi, have got Rishi. The members didn't ask for Rishi. And that's besides the point of, Rishi doing a good job? Rishi's doing all right at the moment. You may not agree with that, but I think democracy has been stolen from the people. And I really question the fact that what value do we have on democracy in this day and age? In my lifetime, in recent years, I've seen Brexit not go through as the people wanted, and I've seen people without the Prime Minister that they voted for in the first place. Regardless if he's told lies or anything like that, I'm not going down that route at the moment. But I just think we've got a big problem with democracy in this country at the moment. And I think a lot of people feel disenfranchised with the whole process. And what people are thinking, well, why should I vote? It makes no difference.
I suppose it's slightly more complicated. I mean, if you look at what happened in the Labour Party and Corbyn's election, so people will say the members voted for Corbyn, he was the legitimate leader of the Labour Party. It's not true, of course. The Labour Party system meant that to get on the ballot paper, you had to have X number of MPs nominating you. At least half of the nominees that nominated Corbyn did so purely because they wanted to stimulate a debate in the party, not because they supported Jeremy Corbyn. So by their stupidity and by their recklessness, they led the Labour Party to have a candidate, its leader, to allow Jeremy Corbyn to become its leader, and they then allowed a situation where this country was nearly led by somebody who was totally unfit to lead any country. So remember that it's not just as simple as saying the members get to choose. It's how the members choose. Who are the members? Are they representative of society? And it's really, really difficult. But the point I was making is not that the MPs should choose. I didn't say that. I said that when Stephen says, but it's about democracy, before the public get to choose, the parties get to choose. And if the parties are going to continue to choose people who divide, then I'm afraid to say it is not going to be in the best interests of their respective countries. That doesn't mean we don't want strong leaders with strong philosophical and ideological beliefs. And we want parties with very different views of the world. That is democracy, differing. Okay, but leaders who set out, as I say, to fan flames, to create division, to cause hatred, to spread fake news, these people, it's extremely dangerous for democracy. And we've seen, by the way, what happens. Independent voters turn against those people in the end. And what Stephen fails to accept, well, maybe he doesn't fail to accept, is that in America, Trump won fair and square against Hillary Clinton. Right? She won the popular vote by a lot, but he won under the system fair and square. By the time the next election came, the reason he lost by it so overwhelmingly is because 40% are Republican and 40% are Democrat and 20% are independent. By the time of that election, because of what he mainly did over COVID and Congress, all those independent voters would vote for anybody other than Donald Trump. So you've got to remember that democracy also can change. Same with Boris. The Tory members must be mad if they think that they went into the next election with Boris Johnson rather than Rishi Sunak as their leader, that would be in the best interest of the Conservative Party. They've completely lost the plot if they believe that to be the case, because the British people have had their fill of Boris Johnson. They no longer trust him and they no longer like him. Now, in 5 years' time, 7 years' time, 10 years' time, will that still be the same? I can't answer that question. I can't answer that question. But the Tory members surely need to wake up and smell the coffee and realise if Boris Johnson's the answer, what's the question? Because they're not asking the right question. He was popular. There is no doubt about it. He benefited from Corbyn's unpopularity, by the way. We should remember that in the last general election. It wasn't just this sweeping, overwhelming love of Boris Johnson. It was a great fear of a Jeremy Corbyn-led country. But also Boris did have a lot of popular support, especially in these so-called red wall seats. Has that support drained away to practically nothing amongst most of those voters who were traditional Labour voters who voted Tory? Most of those people are no longer saying they're going to vote Conservative at the next election. And the reason that they're saying they're not going to vote Conservative at the next election is not to do with Rishi Sunak. It's to do with a combination of Boris Johnson and Partygate, the party's self-indulgence over months in choosing a new leader, and Liz Truss, for all, whatever Stephen might say, trashing the economy. Those are all the factors that have led to the Tory party's current unpopularity. Yeah. So the other thing that happens is a leader can be popular. Stephen's right, Boris Johnson was popular, right? But the idea that the Tory members still believe that's the case, that he would be the electorate's choice tomorrow, it's just so deluded. It's frightening. It's absolutely frightening.
I've seen a slanting opinion within the party, and Rishi seems to be, rallying around now and coming strong. Some of the Red Wall supporters actually like what Rishi's doing. So I was quite surprised when I saw some of the statistics come out for that. So could Rishi turn it round if people really supported him and get behind him? We're seeing the situation now where the Boris clan are all disappearing. So is that a good thing? That could be a good thing for the party?
Sure. I mean, when it becomes about you or me and not about the cause, and you are willing to have a scorched earth strategy to your party or your cause or your beliefs or the country, then frankly you've lost the plot. Yeah. And that is what's happened with some of that is what's happened with some of these characters. Boris Johnson, Donald Trump are examples of this, and it's deeply damaging to their parties in the end. It's deeply damaging to their parties, not just they themselves.
Don't you think that Rishi could pull it out the bag really, because he's a steady pair of hands and people seem to like him, and he has said from the outset, just judge me over the next 12, 18 months on what I achieve.
So I'll be very honest. I think that the scale of Labour's victory will to some extent depend on Scotland, and it will depend on the economic performance of the country. Do people feel that their lives, their standard of living is getting better, that the government's helped them through these difficult times? But I really don't believe this now. If you would have asked me that question a couple of months ago, I would have said to you, it's all to play for.
Don't you think the Green Agenda is going to be a problem for Labour, though?
Labour has many strengths and many weaknesses. I think the problem you've got is...
I just think we have moved slightly away from the question, which is about Trump.
Well, I just think that
Slightly.
I just think that the Tory brand is so badly damaged that I think it's nearly impossible for Rishi Sunak to turn that around by the time of the next election.
Okay, Brent, let's just cut off before we go too much off Trump. Yeah, no worries. Thanks so much for coming on, Ivan.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much for coming, Stephen.
Very much, yeah.
Thank you.
You too.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.